Hello, every pony, and welcome to our latest show, where we take a look at the latest episode of Ponies and give you an idea of what was good and bad. Welcome to Current Canon. My name's Fedora Brony.
And I'm NC Brony, and we are here to take a look at the long-awaited Season 5 premiere, the Cutie Map, Parts 1 and 2. So, how was Season 5's first episodes? Well...
After the defeat of T-Rex, we see Twilight get herself a new castle with 6 thrones. Well, technically there are 7, but who really cares about Spike's throne?
As the main 6 sit down, we get a map which leads us to a quiet little village, where every pony seems creepily happy and everyone has the same cutie marks. That doesn't sound suspicious at all.
Confused about this, the main 6 go and investigate to find out that it isn't the perfect utopia the inhabitants make it out to be, and after seeing that they are inspiring others to think of their cutie marks, Starlight Glimmer, our villain, steals the main 6's cutie marks and attempts to indoctrinate them.
As the story goes on, we discover that Starlight has kept her cutie mark, and upon this discovery, Fluttershy reveals this to the town, which causes the townsfolk to revolt and retrieve their cutie marks.
Starlight flees with the main 6's cutie marks with the intention of hiding them away forever, but after a cool chase scene, is caught by the town's ponies before she can get away.
The main 6 get their cutie marks back. Twilight gives a little friendship speech. Well, at least she tries. Starlight interrupts her. That interruption thing is new. I like it. Then she decided to look over the town for a job well done, and she spent some time in there before they decide to leave. And roll credits. Story-wise, we really like how this story is done. It's nice to be facing a more social issue rather than the repeated villain terrorizes and or threatens all of Equestria and defeats them through a Deus Ex Machina. I'm looking at you, Season 2 finale.
We also really like some of the darker elements that this episode used. I personally was gobsmacked when I saw that Starlight's method of indoctrination for the main 6 is basically akin to torture, of just spewing propaganda in a cell. Not to mention, Starlight forces Fluttershy to tell her who is wishing to have their cutie mark back, and then sends him into what I call the equalization shack with the rest of the main 6. There is definitely more grit in this story, and we really like that.
We also really like how this story concludes. It leaves the main 6 weak while they must rely on their new friends to save the day. After 4 seasons, Twilight or the main 6 usually have to deal with the problems. And it's refreshing to see that your humble side characters can save the day as well. It's also kind of symbolic that the oppressed citizens, in the end, rise up to save the day against their oppressor. And it was a great story and unoriginal. This is exactly the first season of Legend of Korra.
One gripe I had was how rushed the beginning was. We literally go from being in Ponyville, discovering the map, and getting to the town within 5 minutes. And it wouldn't be as much of a problem if the map wasn't going to play a bigger role this season. But it supposedly will. And we just kind of brush it under the rug for later, and just get on to the main story. Heck, the episode's name is the Cutie Map, and we get basically nothing on what this map actually is. There were also a few contrived situations that could have been ironed out. Like, while the town is able to perform song and dance numbers without their cutie marks, the main 6 can't even run when they need to go after Starlight to get theirs. Also, credit to Tommy Oliver for that nitpick.
It also lacks the impact of a season premiere episode. Now, this is solely opinionated, but we don't really feel like this is a good thing. Every premiere episode up until now has felt epic, and it left you feeling as though the fate of Equestria hangs in the balance. The threat this episode presented was very localized and doesn't seem as immediate. Think of it like this. If the main 6 lost, yeah, these ponies would live in oppression and forced ideology, and the main 6 will be locked away until they accept their philosophy. But life in Equestria won't really change for the worse. If anything, Celestia will probably notice Twilight's absence and then run in with the cavalry to save the day. That's only if the main 6 didn't get out.
And aside from aspirations about equalizing the world, Starlight doesn't seem to have a long-term plan for accomplishing said goal. She isn't as big a threat as other season premiere villains. Heck, if the map never called for the main 6, then we probably would have never heard of her.
But all in all, this story is still Very well done, and we found it quite fun to watch.
Now let's talk about the characters in this episode, and let's start with our latest villain, Starlight Glimmer.
What we really like about her is that she is one of the few villains that aren't totally reliant on magical power or force, but through being a charismatic and supposed savior to the lost. The only real issue we have with her is that we don't really know what drove her to do it.
Another big plus we have with her is that, if you think about it, she's kinda like a corrupted Twilight. What was her goal at the end? To make every pony equal. And why was she doing this? Because she was after the pursuit of harmony and friendship. Heck, she goes as far as to say that her way of life is what true friendship is. However, what makes her interesting is that she doesn't seem to realize the harm in what she's doing, or she believes that this is the best way to achieve harmony. She sees herself as the hero of the piece, and the main six kind of just barge in and ruin her life, which leads her to become more of the harsher villain we see in the second half.
Next, let's talk about the main six. For them, we kind of have a mixed bag of how they were written. First off, we like how Fluttershy was written and represented in this episode. This is good because she has had the most inconsistent character and has had the least character expansion, so it's nice to see some continuity with her. We like how she was the sympathetic character to the town. It's also nice that she gets to be the Pony Indian that reveals Starlight's treachery. I actually liked how Fluttershy was written as a character. This feels very weird. I don't like this feeling.
The rest of the main six, however, we have a little bit of a problem with, especially early on. Call me crazy, but I felt as though the main six were a little stereotyped this episode. The writers sort of fell back on their usual things the main six are known for. Rarity's obsession with the looks of the town, Applejack's bluntness, and Rainbow Dash's obsession with action are examples of this. This kind of bugged me, not because it's out of character, but it left me longing for more substance from them. However, this is only a minor in the grand scheme of things, and overall, each character still remains their individual charm we love about them. And I'd rather much prefer them be stereotyped in character than out of character. Next up, let's talk visuals and sound.
This show has always been visually impressive, and the episode is no different. The use of shadow and lighting in certain places was really impressive. And the detail put in the movements of each pony was fluid. And I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like the mane and tails seem to move more naturally with regards to reacting to pony motion. We also need to mention the nervous smile faces we see on the town's ponies, and how well they convey the sense of uneasiness. Though the thing that truly stands out is the set design. The town, when we first look at, gives away that creepy vibe before we even know what's going on. That and the clever use of the equal sign literally everywhere helps reinforce that sense of lifeless equality.
The soundtrack was also just as good. Adventurous when it needs to be, yet in the places it doesn't, has that sense of uneasiness that comes across quite well in some of the gloomier areas. It helps set the atmosphere quite well. Overall, the hiatus has only made the quality of this presentation better. We also got our first song of the season in this episode. The song, entitled Our Town, is sang by Starlight and the town's ponies, and it's basically about how great they think their way of life is in total equality. The song has some inspiration from propaganda marches of wartime eras like World War II and the Cold War. This song gives off that air of uneasiness very well, and it's obvious that this pomp and grandiose song is all an act to the ponies singing it. Its inclusion does well to reinforce the idea that the ponies there have truly bought into the propaganda, and it gives us an idea of how much these ponies believe it. It also helps drive home that dark atmosphere the story is trying to convey. And if you don't believe me, the lyric, "You can't have a nightmare if you never dream," still shocks me every time I hear it. Now, as a standalone song, it's pretty middle of the road. On one side, its inspiration and melodic structure is cool and catchy. For a march, it's really good. On the other, though, I feel this wouldn't be a song I would keep on my iPod to listen to on a regular basis. It's very context-based, and without the context, the song is just creepy to listen to. Plus, while it is catchy, I would argue that some of Ingram's other work has been better. Though I will say the complexity of the instrumentation was very impressive and adds a lot to it. Overall, the song alone is great in the context of the episode, but alone, I would just say it's okay.
This episode's moral isn't really hand delivered via a notebook passage or a letter like much of the other season openers and finales prior, but the implied message, in our opinion, is that by embracing the individuality and diversity of others, we can learn more about ourselves and become better people as a result. And like we said before, we like that this moral came from a more social based issue. It's a good moral that has real life importance to it, and like many morals before, it can be applied by kids and adults alike. It's also nice that the main six are acting more like mentors and are teaching others what they know and have evolved from learning friendship lessons themselves. So I bet we will still have them learn more over the season, but thrusting them into this mentorship role, there is a sense of a real character development for them, and I hope this will continue. As a wise genie once said, be yourself.
This episode does a great job of providing a social-based conflict for the main six to overcome. This conflict leads to a very good story that is much more mature and intriguing, and is very enjoyable. The inclusion of Starlight also is a big plus by giving a more downplayed and charismatic villain that has some surprising complexity. Add on some great visuals, fantastic new settings, and a great song, and this episode has a lot to like.
However, it's not perfect. It suffers some pacing issues early on, as well as a few contrivancies. It suffers some shallow writing for the main six earlier, and while for the most part these issues are minor, the fact it lacks the same impact of a season premiere holds this episode back slightly in our eyes.
However, these flaws don't overshadow the overall quality of this two-parter, and it's a solid start to what looks to be an interesting season. With all this in consideration, the Cutie map gets our rating of 7.5 stabs of sameness out of 10. Join us next week for what looks like the feels episode of the century in Castle Sweet Castle. Till then, though, my name's Fedora Brony.
And I'm NC Brody, and we will see you all next time.